Okay.
Were you able to record?
Pardon?
Were you able to record?
Yes.
Okay,
it's on record.
great.
Yeah.
Great. And then we're not seeing your screen if you're...
Right. I closed it down for a minute
great.
while I was... Okay, there we go. Now, Whitney, I pulled up the one you just sent, so I believe that should be the one that's up here.
Still, is anyone else seeing it? Maybe my computer's just slow.
No one seeing it?
No, we're not seeing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it on this end either.
Okay, let me go to end show. Let me go back. No, it would help if I hit share. Now let's hope this is the right one sitting here. It should be. Now can everyone see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
All right, it's a few minutes after, and so we'll just go ahead and get started. There may be some other folks jumping on. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone, and I know that we are in the middle of summer and toward the end of the fiscal year, so it's a busy time for everyone. So we'll try to give you back some time if we can. Today we're going to talk about progress to date. We're going to share our progress as a whole, but then we're also going to show sort of where each college is within the progress to date. And so I think you'll see that everyone's making some really good progress, but this will give you a chance to identify maybe which colleges are really doing well in the apprenticeship space, or maybe the pre-apprenticeship space, and then you can always reach out to your peers. And so we want to encourage that collaboration.
Welcome to WebEx. Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound.
I'm gonna just...
Want me to go? Move?
No, sorry, I was hearing some feedback, so I was just making sure that we were still good. So we're also going to talk about the match requirement. This, of course, has been incorporated into your reporting, but now that we're getting to the end of...
Or the meeting is not started yet. Re-enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound.
Bernie, I'm getting some feedback from you.
Everybody needs to mute their microphones.
I think he may be trying to get in the audio, potentially.
Yeah.
Enter your attendee ID number followed by pound. If you do not know your attendee number...
Levon, I think you have the option to mute people.
You know, I do. I just have to... I think it's taken care of.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds like it.
We will also talk about AGS Prime and Department of Labor Monitoring, and we'll have some time for an open discussion and next steps. All right, next slide. All right. Is it anyone else hearing the echo? Sorry, guys. This has been kind of a...
Yes, I'm hearing it.
Today's meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, it just started on this end, Whitney.
Now, I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, but everyone who's not speaking should just mute themselves.
Bernie, I think we're getting some feedback from you.
What's that again?
Yeah, we're getting some feedback from you.
You're right. I can't get any. My mic was not working on my tablet, so I'm going to go use off the cell phone.
Okay, can you mute your... I think we're hearing you both ways. So can you mute yourself on the screen, and then you'll be able to hear it on the phone?
Got it taken care of.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Sorry about that, everyone. All right. So here is a glance of our programmatic progress. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of learning communities. The one-on-one coaching has been super beneficial to you all. The local employer roundtables have been very successful, so we're very excited to see. And we have 100 plus employers there, but I think it's closer to probably 200 plus employers have been involved across the 10 colleges for the roundtables. And you can see here for the number of newly created programs, we have around 30, and our goal by end of year 4 is 53. So we're in good shape for that programmatic measure. For measure number 2, which is total number of employers engaged, to date there have been 22 employers reported to us that have adopted apprenticeship programming or hosting apprentices, and by the end of year 4, we are to have around 92. And so we have some work to do here, but I think this will match up well with our apprenticeship numbers, where you'll see that we are doing some great work for measure 1 in terms of participants, in terms of getting the pre-apprenticeship programs off the ground, and hopefully we're making that transition into the apprenticeship programming, and then you'll be able to engage and count more employers under this tab. For number of programmatic performance measure 3, total number of expanded apprenticeship programs, and remember we have shared out a policy around how to count expanded apprenticeship programs, right? This includes additional service areas. It includes current apprenticeship programming that you have expanded. It includes increasing the number of registered apprentices in current programming. So there are a few different ways that you can categorize and count expanded apprenticeship programs. So please do look at that policy for documenting that. And we have around 16 that have reported expansion to date. So I think we're doing pretty good in terms of the programmatic numbers. In terms of participant progress, and of course, we all know that COVID was a challenge. Go back one slide, Luan.
Yeah, I accidentally hit something. Okay, there we go. Nope, now I got to go forward. There we go.
So, you know, we know COVID was a challenge. The late start by the Department of Labor has been a bit of a challenge. But we have been very excited with the numbers that were coming in this semester and the numbers that we think that will be attained over the summer and into the fall semester. Even for some of the colleges that have struggled to get off the ground a little bit, have some really strong foundational plans for moving forward, and we're very excited about that. So total participants served, and again, this is not based on your AGS Prime data. We know that there are still numbers to be, or participants to be entered into AGS Prime. This is based off your 3rd quarter report. As we move into the next quarter, we want to make sure that your quarterly reports match the AGS Prime data more closely. So, but we are looking at around 500 total participants served to date. And I actually pulled this again from your 3rd quarter reports and then also looked at AGS Prime. So there may be some folks in here outside of the 3rd quarter. So we're doing pretty well there. For total apprentices hired by an employer, we have around 72. I think this number is a little higher based on conversations with a couple of you in the recent weeks. So we are about 1/10 of our goal. I expect that as we move into the next semester that we're going to be scaling this pretty quickly, and at least based on some of the conversations with the plans that you all have for moving forward. So we're pretty happy about that. And then of course, all of the rest of the measures are sub-measures of measure 2. So, you know, as measure 2 increases, so will completions and credential attainment. And then of course, being able to identify whether someone is an incumbent worker or was unemployed or underemployed prior to the program. So I think we're in pretty good shape. The Department of Labor, we spoke to our federal program officer yesterday or the day before and let her know that we've been making some progress and that our recent quarter report does not reflect some of the progress just because we rolled out the AGS Prime, which has been awesome. But of course, that was very close to your reporting date. So we acknowledge that not all participants are, their profiles are complete, and so they aren't all pulled into the data file. So she was very excited by that news and is looking forward to our next quarter report, which hopefully will share a much fuller and accurate picture of the progress that you guys are making. All right, next slide. All right, so we're going to share sort of where everyone is, and this isn't like call anyone out or give kudos to those who are really doing well, but we just wanted to kind of show you, because you all may not talk to one another in terms of your numbers, and each of you have very specific goals, and they're all very different across the colleges. But we wanted to share sort of, who's maybe exceeding, and if you want to reach out to a couple of those colleges, we encourage that collaboration and those discussions. Some of you have more similar programming than others, but you can see here that for Measure 1, everyone's doing pretty well, and we're not worried about meeting our participant numbers moving forward. Yvonne, if you want to move to the next slide. And this is Measure 2. You can see that we have some work to do here, but again, like I said, we are very excited to hear some of the progress that is happening and the plans moving forward. And we're hoping that that supplemental funding that we put out, that you will hear soon, hopefully this week, if you haven't already, for those who applied for that, and that'll help you hopefully meet or exceed your numbers in all of these areas. So as you think about, and just so you all know, we're, one of around 25 grantees from across the nation, and we're in pretty lockstep with a lot of other grantees in terms of having decent participant numbers, but having low apprentice numbers. So it's not as if we're an outlier in that regard. So, but we hope to be able to maybe exceed some of those numbers and some of those folks, so that the Department of Labor can let us move this project forward instead of doing this additional strategic planning that you guys were involved in. And we're undergoing some monitoring that we'll talk about in a little bit. So we're very hopeful that the support that we can offer, and we have some exciting resources to share with you all that we'll talk about later today. But in talking with you all, we did some year 2 closeout and year 3 sort of onboarding. And some of the promising practices that came out of that include incumbent worker training. So, when you look at the performance of the individual colleges, you'll see that Oakton is exceeding its number for apprentices, and largely because they're taking advantage of that incumbent worker training for apprentices. And that's a strategy we've been encouraging you all to take advantage of. Some of you have, some of you haven't yet. But that is a great way to sort of get those numbers early on. Obviously, it can't be all of your numbers because there are some benchmarks for folks who were not incumbent workers. But we do think that that is a strategy to kind of get you moving and get building some momentum. Several of you are converting current internships into apprenticeships. So you're reaching out to employers who are already engaged with the college on work-based learning initiatives and already have institutionalized these internships. And so you're finding out that these internships may be paid and that these interns may be then hired after the internship, right? And so it's very close to be an apprenticeship program. So you're finding that, moving that internship to the next step into an apprenticeship program is not that far of a stretch for these employers compared to maybe some employers that you're reaching out to for the first time who aren't used to hosting internships. And so I think that's an excellent strategy. For those who have high participant numbers, we're seeing that as a result of the pre-apprenticeship programs that are partnering with their adult education providers, as well as the non-credit training has been super helpful to kind of get away from that semester-based approach and being able to be timely and responsive. Those seem to be working very well. And of course, the employer roundtables and the individual coaching has been a great success in engaging employers and talking through some of the challenges that employers bring to the table. and the ways in which colleges can help address those challenges. And right now, I think we're seeing some shifts in the economy with, open positions. Employers are starting to hire again. We're seeing lots of help wanted everywhere, not just in the service industry. And so this is an opportune time to really jump into that. All right, LaVon, I will turn this over to you.
So for final reporting purposes, your Q4 final report is due July 30th. I think in something previous, we had indicated August 15th. July 30th, because we have a report due to Department of Labor on August 15th. So we'll be sticking with the 30 days. So please use the ICCB IT apprenticeship grant email so that all of us can access that. You can still, if you want to send it to me, that's fine, but make sure that your first choice is this email. So in the supplemental report, we're going to ask that you verify year 1 and year 2 cumulative performance reporting aligned with your AGS prime. And one of the ways we're really going to do that is looking at programmatic numbers, the 3 programmatic measures that we looked at just a few minutes ago. What apprenticeship programs have been created, what employers are engaged, and what apprenticeship programs have been expanded and how. And then we are going to ask that you submit a student success story. On the 3 measures, we will have an additional spreadsheet that will ask you to identify the specific programs and employers, the specific employers engaged, and the specific apprenticeship programs that have been expanded, and then a brief description of how. That will be either attached to the existing Q4 or will be a separate submittal. We're cleaning that up now, finalizing that now. And then the apprentice student success story, also we can just attach to with that supplemental. So that's where we are going with that, so that we start off year 3 clean and everything aligned and accurate. So just wanted you to know that. Whitney, anything you want to add on that?
No, I think that's good, LaVon. I do want to, maybe we'll take this as a good chance for us to kind of just stop and see if there's any questions so far. No questions?
I guess not.
Sounding good? All right.
Okay. And then do you want me to continue, or do you want to jump back in?
Nope, you can go ahead.
Okay.
So Whitney, Brenda did ask in the chat if they were going to get a copy of the slides.
Yes, we will send that out in addition to some other documents after this meeting.
I have a question, and maybe this is kind of off cue. What is the difference between, and I see that there's a difference with the Q4 report or this final report opposed to the information that you're requesting by the end of June this month?
It's the same.
Okay.
So okay, so you've got January, February, and March, and you submitted that report in April. So then you've got April, May, and June. There is no report due June 30th. There's a report due July 30th. That is the Q4, quote, final report for year 2.
So I think what I'm referring to that's due the end of June of this month is the agreement. So that's totally different, correct?
Oh, yes.
Because that's the scope of work that you're asking us. I'm just trying to understand all the moving parts.
Yes, Lucretia, that is correct. That is your grant agreement information for year 3 that will allow you to expend funds and move forward. Right.
So yes, just to reiterate, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, the scope of work information includes a budget. That's all for, and that's due June 30th, and that is all for year 3. The quarter 4 report that's due at the end of July, obviously, is to document the progress in the recent quarter.
Outcomes.
And that supplemental report, again, very small. It's not going to be anything crazy. We're just asking for, because we've been asking for quantitative data, right? Like how many employers, how many programs. Now we kind of want to know who and what, right? And just kind of giving us some of that qualitative data. So, but it's for year 1 and year 2. So, and we have the slide at the end that kind of redocument some of those dates for you.
Does that answer, Lucretia? Okay. All right. Great. Okay. So as we look at the year 3 expectations, we want that continued focus, of course, you do too, on employer engagement. As you all know, that's key to getting those apprentices. And that is ultimately the measure that the Department of Labor is looking at. Now, they're looking at all of them, of course, and we're going to be held accountable for them. But the big one is the hiring of how many apprentices are hired. How many apprenticeships do you have? And so we have to stay cognizant of that at all times. And believe me, we're constantly, trying to think up ideas and what we can do to help move things forward. That scaling apprenticeships, measure 2. That's the we would call it would be the big one. Enhanced focus on incumbent workers. We addressed that earlier, but this for some of you can really be a place you could really get low-hanging fruit. So we want to stay aware of that. And remember that an incumbent worker is an apprenticeship with an incumbent worker would be that where they are currently working, that employer puts them into an apprenticeship program. So it's not someone that was already working and then goes to an employer. That would be, a regular apprenticeship. But incumbent workers are currently working with an employer who puts them into an apprenticeship. So if you are interested, I would suggest, Oakton, as Whitney indicated earlier, they have been doing this. I'm sure they are more than happy if you want to talk to them about this or how they're making this happen, what kinds of employers seem to be open to this. They would be more than willing to help you on that. Then we do have to institutionalize our apprentice mentoring with employers. So we're working on a document around that right now. And the mentoring piece is a required component of the grant. So we'll be talking about that more soon, but want you to be aware of that. Then it is important that you begin documenting your match each quarter. And think about that as you're submitting your fiscal reports. Make sure that you're capturing any match for your expenditures. And remember, you're only held accountable for the match of what you are spending. Granted, you have a total dollar amount that you are allowed to spend, but if you don't spend that quarter, the match, of course, is only for what you've expended. So, and then bi-weekly data input into AGS Prime. Now, what we're asking for there is that you go in every couple of weeks and you put in and you keep your data updated and you enter data. That way, we're hopeful by instituting that and asking you to do that, that it will allow you to stay up to date and not lag, so that when it comes time to do your actual, when you have to do your quarterly report and get all your data into AGS Prime at the end of the quarter, you don't have 200 people to put in. You've kept up on that, et cetera. And I know some of you are trying to figure out who actually is going to do that input. And so just make sure that whoever is doing that, you have made them aware of this bi-weekly data and that you are following up on that with them. You want to go ahead? Want me to go ahead, Whitney, or?
This is Rebecca. I've got two things I'd like to offer.
Sure.
Okay, back to that slide. Number where it says scale apprentices, and that's that performance measure number 2.
Yes.
Then who you can count in there, let's be real clear. Who you can count in there are registered apprentices, which we have very few of, apprentices, and that just means that they meet those 5 requirements of what is an apprentice program, and which you happen to talk about it. Are they paid and
Right.
continue working there? So it's the apprentice, because it could be just one thing, help desk, and that's the apprentice program for Rebecca Lake. And I don't need anything else. I don't need a certificate. I don't need an AAS degree. I just need whatever that company needs me to need. And then the third one is you can count incumbent workers in there. So I think people are missing that, is that there are 3 people who go into this. That is registered apprentices, apprentices, and incumbent workers. The other thing I want to talk about or say to you is I'm doing consulting with AACC on expanding apprenticeship across the country. They have what they call an ECA grant. And the person that used to work for me at Harper, which is Daryl Katz, has a mentoring piece, because, you know, we had that as part of our program. I give Daryl's name to all of these colleges across the country, and they're using Daryl and getting great results. So I would encourage you to if you want, Whitney, to reach back out to me about Daryl Katz, because you guys don't need to invent the wheel. Daryl's got it, and people love him. And so you need to talk to him, because there's, you know, he's been doing that for now 6 years with Harper. I started him 5 years ago, and then he's across the country, and people absolutely love him. So, and what he's doing, and he can adapt it. You could adapt it to your specific college, but the core are there. Don't reinvent the wheel. Daryl's got it, and slides and handouts and all that stuff. He does it online. So please, if that is something you'd like, I'll share Daryl's contact information. So, but the main thing was, you can count these apprentices in 2, in 3, in 4, and then down in 6 is using incumbent workers. So don't leave that out, because you're going to be leaving out numbers. So that was it.
Yep. Absolutely. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, and we will, when we send out the slides, we'll go ahead and resend out the flow chart that we created too, because it specifically documents incumbent workers in that measure too. So please, it's a 1-pager, please, or, you know, maybe 3 pages long, because it has the definitions too. Please utilize that, print that out, use that as your guide. That'll help you determine sort of how and who fits into which category. So but yes, Rebecca, please connect us to Daryl. I know Angela's been working on some mentoring resources that we plan to share out this month, but we, of course, would love to not recreate the wheel, as so you say, and learn from colleges who are doing this well. So that would be great.
I have a question. Could you share a little bit more about what you mean about documenting the mentors?
I'm having a really hard time hearing. Ooh.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Could you share a little bit more about what you mean about documenting the mentors?
I don't think are you sure it's documenting the mentoring? We talked about documenting match each quarter.
Oh, but nothing about documenting mentorship?
In the sense that you would want to document as you develop your mentoring relation, you know, as you have your employers develop mentoring relationships, you would want to document that and capture that in, you know, somewhere. Probably most likely you'd want to show that in your activities section of your quarterly report, because that's where a lot of those things, meetings and and things like that are captured. But as far as documenting it in terms of turning it in like on AGS Prime or something like that, no. If I understood your question. Whitney, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that we would ever look for is that you've had a conversation, that is actually happening, one, that the apprentices are being mentored, but two, that you had a conversation with employers about, like, here's the role of the mentee, here's the role of you as mentoring within the employment space, and then of course any mentorship that the college offers the student. You know, we would want to you to be able to document that in some way, but that's not a high priority at this time in terms of all the other things that you're going to have to document, which include those 5 elements of an apprenticeship program. Those are the things that will need to be documented.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, an easy place to stick that is in your quarterly report under activities. So it's already, there's a space there, it's expandable, so you could just, as a place to capture it for now, you could just stick it there. Move on. Anyone else? Okay. So here is a lovely definition of match requirement, just to give you the background, the reason why, and the sources of the information. Remember, it is exactly 35% of matching funds, and it can be in the form of cash in kind and third-party contributions, but it has to show that your funds were expended. So I think we've posted this a few times on match, but we wanted to put it in there again. Any questions on this? We have a next slide on match. Let me go to the next one then. So here are examples, which, you know, staff time and effort, wages for apprentices paid by the employers with non-federal funds, other costs incurred for employers for hosting apprentices, not paid for with federal funds, paid release time, in-kind contributions, equipment, supplies, etc., not charged to the grant or other federal grants. So these are some examples, and they're good ones, and it should be based on this. It should be easy to meet your match. And if you're concerned about that, look at this list and see how you can be, perhaps maybe you haven't been exploring all the ways you're actually contributing to this grant outside of the grant funds itself. So there may be other things that you're doing that you just haven't thought about capturing. So then once again, each quarterly report, please. And then just save your documentation as always for audit purposes.
Does anyone have any questions about the match? I know some of you have been documenting this each quarter, others haven't documented it at all to date. And so we wanted to just take this time to really kind of talk through the expectations and strategies.
Now, some of you, if I'm thinking back to my quarterly reports, well, never mind. I'll stop. You may have questions that maybe answer it.
You guys all feel good about documenting match? These are some of the allowable ways. There are, of course, other ways, but these are sort of the main ones that I think will be the easiest to document.
Well, I have a question. Does anyone have any others that you've found to be a good source? As Whitney said, there are other ways to come up with match. Anything else you'd like to contribute as a suggestion beyond what we have? I mean, going through the citations, of course, and look at other ways, but perhaps some of you already are doing some other things. Are you ensuring that you're using, where you have apprentices, are you making sure that you're capturing what the employer is doing with non-federal funds?
If you're using their wages as the match.
Right. Or other costs they may incur. Maybe they're providing equipment, supplies, etc. for the employee. slash apprentice. Well,
and maybe you guys need to, for those who, you know, I know obviously some of you are tracking this, others you may be leaning on your business and fiscal departments to do this. So, you know, as you share this information with the folks who are tracking this, if you have questions, you can always reach out. I do want to also just make a note that in the original scope of work where you have identified that you will meet the 35% match, that it is based on expenditures. So let's say originally we agreed to give you $200,000, let's make it easy, $100,000 over the 4 years. Therefore, you would have had to provide a match of $35,000, right? That's the 35%. But let's say after the 4 years, you actually only expend $80,000. It's 35% of that $80,000. Okay,
thanks.
It's based on expenditures.
Yeah, I was trying to say earlier, I don't think I used the word expenditure.
And then also, for those who get additional funding from us, not through the supplemental funding, but actual additional funding through this CAP-IT grant, again, it's based on expenditure. So if we originally agreed on $100,000, but you know, we've moved some money around and now we're providing you $150,000, even though originally you agreed to $35,000, right? It has to be 35% of your expenditures. Okay, so for most of you, you may just not be expending the full thing, but for a couple of you, some of you are getting some additional dollars just because you're outperforming. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. And so we'll be taking some stock into the match as we look at year 2 final reports, and we'll reach out to you if we have any concerns with what you've done so far.
You can also submit questions that would go on our FAQ. If you think of something and you just want to put it there, send a question to somebody, we'll put it into FAQ, come up with an answer. And I'm going to bring up something, Whitney, that I think is, which I think I've seen, but I want to make sure. So some of you are really low on your expenditures, as you know, we've talked about, and but you have been submitting match for more than the 35% in a particular quarter because that's what you actually expended for match. So did that make sense? So let's say you only spent $20,000. So, you know, your match for that is not very much, but maybe maybe what you actually expended in match, particularly if it's staff time and effort, outside of the federal grant, may be more than that for, you know, for a quarter. So as far as I know, that's okay to go ahead and put that in each quarter, even though you may have expended nothing or very little for the quarter.
Yeah, you can exceed the 35%. It's just a minimum of 35%. Yep. All right, questions? I saw something in the chat and I can look.
Yeah, and I heard somebody too.
Okay, so we'll pause there for additional questions.
I just posted a question in the chat. I was wondering when the colleges would be notified if they would be receiving additional funding. Would it be prior to our grant submission or our year 3 submission next week?
Are you talking about the supplemental grant that folks applied for? You should hear this week.
Okay.
Did somebody else have a question? I thought I heard some. Okay, apparently not. Okay. Well, if everybody's ready to move on. So, in July, we have the U.S. Department of Labor is going to be doing a virtual desk audit. No one will be coming in physically, but between July 19th and July 23rd, they will be reviewing programmatic, primarily programmatic. They'll be looking at you know, expenditures also, but they will be doing a thorough review. there is a meeting that they have set up with our sub-grantee lead contacts, that is primarily those of you on the call, for Thursday, July 22nd. That's not mandatory, where they would be talking with you and asking you questions about how things are going, what you know, etc. So I am in the process of getting everyone's names and information for the Department of Labor. At least you will get an invitation for that, and it will be your choice whether to attend or not. But we want to let you know that there is space in that week for that meeting. Additionally, we will be asking you to submit materials and documents for their review. Now, we're in the process of working on that right now, too. We've gone through the document with the Department of Labor. We've identified things that we believe we need to collect. And we'll be reaching out to you in the next few weeks to begin pulling that together yourselves. Once again, it will all be virtual. And so I want to point out a couple of things that are highlighted here. One, policies and procedures on recruitment, you know, anything that you have on how you recruit students, how you are reaching out, how you're tracking them, etc. Outreach materials, marketing. But then I want to point out this case management documentation, which is a kind of that's not what we call it in education. But as pointed out here, it's your forms, academic career planning forms, employment plans, etc. Additionally, think about the systems you use internally to track students. You know, I don't know, I do PeopleSoft and all that sort of thing that you use for management of your students, that has all kinds of demographic information and everything like that. So to think about that as part of case management. And then any, you know, if you keep email files, etc., on clients. But that is going to be, I know, something they are going to want to look at. So I just wanted to.
I got a question, LaVon.
Yeah.
So with this prime system that we're utilizing, and kids will be trained this week, would it be acceptable, since we're entering these individuals into the system and providing the information in terms of what our interaction was, would it be acceptable to have copies of that, or is that not an option? Because that's that case management piece.
Yeah, we can access that ourselves to look at.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think they're going to want to see, which it kind of does in AGS Prime if you look at it one way, because it shows movement through the system. But they're wanting to see things like you met with the client and you developed a career plan with them. Okay. And you're saying, first you're going to do this, then you're going to do this, then you're going to do this.
Okay.
And all right. You know, some sort of a plan. And that in AGS Prime, it shows up like after the fact, after they've been put into something, then you enter them, then you move them, you know. So this is planning. And how you're managing moving that student through the system.
All right, I just was asking. I haven't actually seen the system yet.
It's still a good idea, because AGS Prime can be utilized to show movement, but it really, I don't think it shows planning.
Right.
Whitney, what do you?
Yep. Can I jump in here? I just that was a good question, Lucretia.
Yes.
So when we're being monitored, they're asking for, you know, 100+ documents. You know, you all have been through some sort of grant monitoring in the past. The issue here that we have is that, you know, we put out a grant monitoring guide, of course, your grant agreement that stipulates that you have to have a policy on this, and that you have to have a policy on case management, or you have to have a process for this. But we haven't. Right, because you guys already have these current systems and processes and policies. So we haven't created them ourselves. And so she's wanting examples of these various things, which is why we're saying if you have something that's neat and clean that we can utilize as an example. So for, the things that are listed here on the screen are things that we know from the beginning that we don't necessarily have. So if you want to share with us any outreach materials you developed, any policies, procedures around recruitment, any case management documentation. So if you have a form that you have someone fill out, if you have a career planning guide or tool that you utilized, and it doesn't have to be just for this like CAPIT grant, right? That you've utilized by the college for this. If you have an employment plan that you're utilizing for WIOA that you want to share with us that can be incorporated into this grant, these are types of examples that we can then show to the Department of Labor, because they're working with grantees that aren't necessarily colleges too, that have these strong institutional process and policies. So we just want to be able to document that you all are doing this, but we aren't recreating the wheel and have all these additional policies and procedures just for this project.
And that, thanks, that's an excellent piece of information for everybody. And I would suggest that then go through, what you have and look at it and give us, I wouldn't start sending that in at this point, like, oh, I've got this, I've got that. Pull it together, and then we'll be reaching back out with some more information and then have a more comprehensive and organized way for you to submit your information. Right?
Yeah, we can share out a fuller list of some things that we may be looking for, but and we'll do that today when we submit the materials. But yeah, I mean, you can. I think they can go ahead and just send them in to you or me or whatever.
I was going to say, if you want to send it to me, but give yourself a little bit of time and go through and look and see what you have and what you think really fits and that sort of thing. Okay, questions on this? Go ahead.
Whitney, to go along with that, we don't need each of these from each college. So don't feel like, and Joy, you're on my screen, so I'm going to pick on you. So if you are currently, your outreach material is a single brochure and you want to send that, fine. If it's something that you're like, this really needs some updating because it's been a year and we haven't touched this, then don't send us that.
Right.
These are just things that we know we will need. And so then it may be one of those things, if everybody sends us outreach, where you may be able to go, okay, we're going to pick on a couple colleges and go, can you send us a policy procedure example, because we didn't get any of those. So send us what you're comfortable sending us at this point. We'll sort through it and make sure we've got at least a couple of examples of each, but don't feel pressured that you have to send all of these documents to us right now.
Thank you. We greatly appreciate your support in this area, because any findings that we receive, any scrutiny that we receive from the Department of Labor will then trickle down to you all. So we're really hoping to get out of this, as unscathed as possible. So we would appreciate any support that you all have. All right, I think we can move on from there, Levon.
Okay. At this point, we're going to have some discussion around AGS Prime, and Jay Brooks and Todd Jorns are going to step in here and at least hit these 3 bullets, and then hopefully there'll be some time for some questions. So Jay, Todd?
Yep, Jay and I will be tag teaming through this next section. Okay. So I have some training set up tomorrow from 2 to 4 with Kishwaukee folks, and also some City Colleges folks are going to be doing that. This is the first time going into to see what the AGS Prime is all about. We are scheduling a follow-up training later this summer with AGS Prime staff, mainly Susan. That will probably be happening in mid to late July, so keep your eye open for that email coming through. I'm going to try and share my screen here.
Levon will have to stop. Oh, no?
I just took it over. I was mean.
So Todd's much more.
Todd just stole it.
Yeah, he just.
Steal's a bad word. That's a hard word. I just borrowed the screen. I just pushed mine in front. There's a couple new features or updates have been added to the AGS Prime. And one of the first things I'm going to do is point out, well, let's go over here. Under your participant management, this is the this screen is our admin, so you guys don't have this admin button at the top, but under participant participant management on the view participants section on the left-hand side over here. This right now, there's a new thing called participants by the employer. So that's a new feature you can actually look at. Remember, under participant management, under the view participants, these are all different views you can look at. And I can click on here just to show you what's going on. But now it's you're sorting by the employer. If I click on the home button, I want to bring this up. Our resource catalog here. This is a great place to come in. Remember at the very bottom here, we have that HB1 workflow guide. I'm not sure if you guys printed it off or not, but that really has a nice little, and I really sort of like a flow chart, but shows you what you need to be doing for the non-incumbent apprentices and incumbent apprentices. It'll step you sort of through that. So that's a great guide. I would definitely go over here, download it, and have that available to you. And also in here, you'll see we have some videos, the YouTube videos. If you want to go through, just because it's been a while since you had the AGS Prime training, go ahead and just, they're like an hour and 35 minutes. I think you can watch one of these videos just to get caught like, oh, that's what Susan was trying to tell us to do. And the last thing here is they added this feature, the AGS Prime Application Administrators module here. So you can go ahead and look at that. That's a nice little guideline just talking about what the sections are and tips what to do to be filling that thing out. If you guys do have questions along the way, remember we're starting to create an FAQ, and I'm going to make another document maybe called Tips and Tricks as we learn more about AGS Prime and how to get our information in there. Just email those to one of us because we're going to create a document, the FAQ, and then we're actually going to be putting it right inside here. So it'll always be in your resource catalog section. It might take a few more weeks before we get it up there, but as we get more and more stuff in that FAQ and maybe tips and tricks, this is where it's going to go. This is where it's going to be. This is your resources for along the way with AGS Prime. Any questions about anything I went over here? If not, I'm going to tag team over to Jay, and he's going to take you through over a new, I'm not sure if you knew, there was a report section added to your thing. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Jay can take over.
All right. Thank you, Todd. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys. So just to sort of reiterate what Todd was saying in regards to the FAQ and the information, we know, and even prior to gaining access to AGS, we know this is a very complicated grant with lots of different rules and lots of different things that cause individuals to be excluded from being able to be claimed and counted and all of that kind of thing. So what we want to do is we're wanting to provide you guys with the tools to make sure that when we get to those the end of the quarter and you guys are reporting information that we're able to capture and report everyone. So let me go ahead and push out my screen here. So currently, as ICCB staff, we have state-level access, and that's what Todd was just showing you there. So you saw an admin button and all that kind of thing. So we could actually go into the each individual college and look at data. But what we wanted to do is also to kind of show you what the view looks like from your viewpoint, not from our viewpoint. So in terms of what you're seeing here now, this is an access level that we set up at one of the colleges, Illinois Central, just to kind of demonstrate for you what it looks like for you. So as Todd was explaining, you have access to this resource catalog, and when you come in here, all of the various videos and things of that nature that have been posted will all be there. In addition, the FAQ that we're building and the tips and tricks, like Todd said, will also be there. I really want to stress to you guys, because having sort of come in on the tail end of the reporting piece to DOL, I know how many rules are being enforced, and it's somewhere in the vicinity of 150 different rules. So I say that only to encourage you guys, as you're working through and entering data, don't hesitate to reach out and send us those questions. We're all kind of learning this, and I've worked with a lot of different grants. This is probably one of the more complicated in terms of logic and rules about what can be reported when, and how certain fields within AGS have to check against other fields in order for the DOL upload to work. One thing I always like to point this out is that when we go to upload data, we can have no errors in that file. If we have 500 records and one error in one record, that prevents the entire file from being uploaded. So we want to, equip you guys with what you need to make sure that you can resolve errors locally before we get to that point in the quarter. And I'll show you a couple things here that will help you do that. But the first thing I do want to point out is this workflow guide. Obviously, in terms of each student and what that student's status is within the program will depend upon how deeply you go into the student's portfolio and enter information. But I would just sort of, to reiterate what Todd said, I would encourage you to come in and use this flow chart so that you make sure that all of the various folders within that portfolio are being addressed, and that you're able then to be able to get all of the information in so that an individual can be reported and can be claimed. So I'm going to jump back over to AGS for a second here. And again, this is what it looks like for you. So now a new link that you guys have probably seen come online, I believe Todd extended access for you locally within the last week or so. So there's a new tab here called Reports. And what this is this is the type of reports that we have available to us. These reports are limited for you to just your college. So you can't see the data for everyone across the state, but you can see the data for your own program. And one thing I wanted to bring up to you, going back to this issue about errors and resolving errors and trying to work through that, there is this little option here that says H1B WIPS CSV file. Now, this is not a report per se, right? This is more of something that we actually use for reporting to DOL. But it's the actual file that we are generating out of the system that gets uploaded to DOL. Now, why that's probably important to you is there's an option. If I come in and I generate this report, I can come in and say, I want to look at CAPED. I want to look at up to 2021, quarter 4. I'm going to choose to put a header in so that I can actually see what it means and that kind of thing, or what each column represents, so it's not just data. And there's this option here that says ignore error file. So what I would encourage you to do, Levon talked earlier about being able to stay on top of your data by entering it at least on a bi-weekly sort of level. The other thing I would add to that is as you're doing this, come in, leave this as a no, because you don't want to ignore your errors. If there's an error, you want to try to fix that, because that will make sure that you get credit for that student in the file. There's also an option here for including additional fields. You can certainly do that if you want, but it's not necessary. And then under staff organization, you're just going to see all or your college, but all for you will really just means your college. That's the only, you're not going to get additional other college information by selecting all. If you think of it as like a parent and child, at the state, we're the parent, at each college is the child. And then at each college, if you had, and if you think about it like in terms of like a sub-grantee, if you did have something like that, which, I'm not getting into whether or not that's applicable for this grant, but that's just a way to think about how this relationship works, right? So for our purposes, you'd come in and select all of this, and what it would allow you to do is to come, I'm not going to run this now because we don't want to actually look at individual student records, but I'm going to sort of show you what the output looks like. So I've sort of filtered out and sort of made blurry here the names of individuals, but this will tell you the types of errors that your particular college has. So as you're looking at these, if there's an error that you're not familiar with or you don't understand, or you just like, okay, how do I fix this? Then, reach out to us, let us know. What we're finding is, for the most part, most of the errors that we're seeing are the same type of errors. A very common one, for example, is like where individuals are entering a series of 9s for the SSN, and then they're putting in the same date of birth and the same date of program entry for an individual, and that causes what's called a duplicate error. So things like that could be fixed really easily by, and we always stress the need to have the SSN, but you can't have, 2 records can't have those things all being the same. So all of that just to say, really want to encourage you so that it's not at the end of the term or at the end of the quarter or the end of the month overwhelming. Just come in, tackle this every couple weeks, and that way you can, once you've seen the types of errors you're getting, then you're in a better position to be able to resolve those as you kind of move forward. Now, the other thing I want to kind of draw your attention to, there all of these reports, and I was showing this CSV file where you looked at the errors. There is an ability, I want you to know this too, because like sometimes you may say, okay, I've got this many students. In my mind, or when I reported the narrative, we reported, let's say 100 students. But then when we go and look at your file, we only see 85 students, whatever the case might be. If you come in and you did the same thing, let's just say you're selecting the years and the quarters, we're going to put our header row in. But this time, if I'm not fixing errors, I just want to know who's going to be in my WIPS file. I can say ignore the errors and say yes. And then when I run this file, I'm going to get something that looks like this. Okay. Now, obviously, date of birth is going to be in there and other things. I've just sort of got rid of that because we want to protect everyone's identity. But what this will tell you is it'll actually, and it will also include the SSN of every student. Again, I filter that out so you don't know who it is. But if you're thinking, I have 100 students I'm going to report, you can actually come in and use this Excel file to see, okay, I only had 95. And, you know, I know these headers, sometimes spreadsheets like this can be a little overwhelming. You know, it's not, this isn't a report that I would recommend that you use to try to, you know, do analysis on unless you really like Excel. But what I do like about it is it's a really quick and easy way for you to actually see when we report to DOL, here's who is going to be reported from my college. And so I think that's important for you to be able to know. And if you do a wrap text on this, you pretty easily can see those, you know, as you're familiar with the Pearl document from DOL, it sort of shows you how we're pulling in all of these different variables from the AGS data that you've entered. So, you know, I think this is a good tool to make sure that your total number in the final official upload matches with what you expected or what you may have reported in the narrative. So let's go ahead and jump back over to AGS for a second. So the other thing I want to show you is there's several different reports in here that you can run. We're not going to do all these. Some of these are actually student level reports, so I can't really show them to you, but you certainly can go and run them for your own college locally. But there's some that are more summary level reports, and those I can kind of show you. I'm just going to highlight one today just for demonstration purposes, but I want to start out with, you know, the key to understanding reports is you got to understand what's driving it, right? So if I run this program enrollment report, if I just click on Run Report, I'm going to get something that looks like, make sure I get the right tab here, like this. Okay, now that's all good and well, and it's interesting, but I don't know who, you know, what is being used to calculate any of these fields. It's just a bunch of charts, and I don't have any way to get centered on how individuals are being pulled into this chart. So what we've run is we've run the program enrollments dashboard. But there's a really nice way to be able to break these boxes down and understand how individuals are being pulled in. If we go back to our reports tab, the very first thing that's listed there is something called the code book. All right. Now, when you open up this code book, it will actually look like this right here. And you'll see all of the reports that we had listed there are all in this little drop down. And so if I want to look at services dashboard, for example, I can select services dashboard, say run report, and it's going to give me the services tab, and then each of these kind of represent a box. So let's put this in context, right? So let's go ahead and go to the program enrollments dashboard. So this is the code book. I'm going to run this report. This is the code book for the program enrollments dashboard, which is this dashboard, right? If I want to know, okay, I need help interpreting this report, I can just open this up, and then each of these little boxes are virtually or basically descriptions of these boxes. So if I want to know, for example, enrollments, who's being counted in that particular or that specific box, I can come back over and go, you know what, let me look at total enrollments. And it will tell you here, okay, the description is the total number of enrollments. Here's how the data, here's how that box is being filtered, and here's how it's being computed. So that way, anytime you're looking at one of these program enrollment reports or any of the reports, it doesn't have to be program enrollment, and you want to know how are they calculating this box, this field, you can come in here and you can actually look and see by opening up any of these boxes to get at what's in your chart. And you notice here, some of these are kind of interactive where you can kind of adjust out your chart. Up here you can set ranges on the chart, so instead of the default typically will be from today's date and it'll go 1 year back, but you can always come in and say, you know what, I want to isolate. I just want to look at maybe, let's say from this fourth quarter, April 1st to the end of June, and so when you do that, it's going to adjust and then provide you that information. So what our hope is that as you get more data in, you are able to complete more folders, get more of the student's portfolio completed, that you can use this report or these series of reports in conjunction with the code book to sort of begin to see how the information you're entering, how it's making its way through the pipeline, and then ultimately being reported up to DOL. I do want to also, again, I can't stress this because I know the evaluation piece is coming, and the need to have those SSNs is critical because I know for what matching will occur, the SSN must be there in order for that match to occur. So if at all possible, make sure that you have that information. So I'm not going to go into participant management and that kind of thing. Like I said, since I'm actually in Illinois Central's college's interface here right now, I don't want to bring up any actual students, but nonetheless, you kind of see here how this new report's available. And to the point that Todd was making earlier, we're working closely with AGS, so as additional features come available, those can be sort of rolled out and made available to you as needed. And again, I want to leave you with, don't hesitate to use this resource catalog and don't hesitate to reach out with questions. This is, again, one of the most complicated grants in terms of logic and validation rules that I've ever encountered. And I know just for the purposes of making sure we can report everyone, I want to make sure that we don't end up missing out on being able to report someone just because there's a simple error. So reach out with questions and then also stay on top of that error log. And if you see things that you're not quite sure how to interpret that error, you're not exactly sure what that means, let us know and let us make sure that we are representing and reflecting the true services that are being provided at your college. So with that, I'll stop for a second and see if you have any specific questions. And with a clear caveat, let me add that oftentimes, given the level of complexity here with this data and how many different fields are checking other fields, sometimes we actually kind of come back and say, okay, let's respond to this as an FAQ because, again, I don't want to just sort of shoot from the hip here and say, this is the answer, this is the answer, because if you ever looked at that Pearl document with all of the validation rules, one field entered in error can create a cascading problem for you. So we want to make sure that we're giving you the most accurate, comprehensive data or guidance so that all your records are being reported accurately. So let me stop and see if you have any questions at this point. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here, and I guess maybe kick it back over to Levon or Whitney.
Okay, I got to get back to mine. So here we go. There we go. Okay. Keep in mind there will be training later this summer, and you can submit, as Jay and Todd both said, questions for the FAQ that's being developed.
I would also like to just, put in here too that, as you have questions, please, we only have about 15 minutes left. Please throw those in the chat because we're creating an FAQ, and that way we can get that back out to you in terms of here's the question, here's the answer, and maybe some screenshots. Our ability to do sort of a training with you all, I mean, we can go into more in depth in terms of the different reports, but it becomes difficult because of the AGS Prime system and how it has student information, so it's just easier to do it one-on-one with the colleges. That way we can actually go into each report and feel more comfortable with that sharing on the screen. So we just wanted to kind of put that out there. But as you have questions, please post those in the chat. We want to fill up our FAQ. A few of you have sent in some questions. Most of you have input student information. Some of you have a lot of not reviewed files still out there. So we want you to make sure that you're completely fulfilling the student participant profile. And then a couple of you still don't have not entered data in. So we need to make sure that you're doing that.
Anything else?
Yeah, Whitney, can I ask to the third bullet there in terms of just challenges or questions you have as you have been entering data in AGS? Are there specific things that you're coming up over and over again that seem to be causing issues for you that we can address? Okay, well, the more you're, over this next month as you're entering more data, I would encourage you to reach out sooner than later because, we don't want to get down to the last, week and sort of be hard pressed to try to get everything addressed. So as you're doing it in real time, and you encounter a problem, be sure to reach out to us unless we can't get those issues resolved.
Hi, this is Rebecca. I have a really quick question, if it's okay. So in some of my colleges have reported that there's only 3 or 4 things that they can designate as an apprentice program. So is that going to get enlarged or no?
So I think she's speaking, Jay, about the pathways, those 8 pathways that we have identified.
Mm-hmm. So what we have entered, and if I'm going down the wrong road here, Whitney, please stop me, but my understanding, what we've entered in terms of what you can choose as far as a specific program are the ones that have been identified by the colleges and by ICCB as being allowable or apprentice type programs that are underway. I think if there's something going on that, again, you're not seeing it show up in this drop down of a specific type of apprenticeship program, you need to reach out to Levon and or Whitney and let them know so that we can really quickly add things in if that should be the case. But
and it will be because if Rebecca Lake only needs to take CompTIA A+ or Google IT, and that is her apprenticeship program, not registered, then I need to be able to put it in that box. I need to be able to say, here's the apprenticeship for Rebecca Lake. All she needs to, the program meets all the 5 requirements because I talked to the college and I even have a document that I've checked everything and I know who I talked to. And so then where is it? So it just is Google IT or whatever it is. But if, you're making it extremely difficult that there's no place to put these. And if you're looking for apprenticeship programs, you cannot force them into a registered apprentice label. And so you've got to get me some flexibility here. Can I just take Google IT? Can I just take CompTIA A+? Can I just take CompTIA Cyber? I'm making that up. Because it's an apprentice program, and that's all my company wants me to take is Google IT. And
so I think the confusion is, so we've identified sort of some broader 8 pathway. I think there's like 8 of them, 8 pathways, and that's not the specific credential. Now, Google IT is listed in there. So for example, we have software development, we have networking, and it's really about a pathway aligned to the occupation. So those are sort of the big umbrella categories. And some of the questions or some of the colleges have said, okay, well, we have I'm just going to throw an example out there, that a fake example, but ICCB's IT boot camp, that's my program name. That's not on this list. I need to add it to this list. That's not, we're looking for general categories. Now, once you select that general category, then later you can go in and then the credential list is much longer. CompTIA A+, Google IT. It has the very specifics, and that's where you can come to us and say, hey, we need this added, because that's a much more specific list. Now we're open to additions to the general pathways, but again, we're not finding any suggestions outside of the ones that we've added. We did add Google IT because it's very specific, and we know that it's one of those that people are embedding a lot into their pre-apprenticeship programs.
Right, but they need to have that flexibility. I think from what I'm hearing is they only have these. They used to be 4, so I don't know where the 8 came from. You know, I haven't looked at it. So you know, they need to be able to do that. And then don't forget the credential, because we understand the credential is not only a nationally recognized credential, but the credential could be from the college, ICC. City of Chicago, you know, Kishwaukee. Right. So it's not only CompTIA A+, Google IT. So you have to understand that, you guys. It's also...
It's in there, Rebecca. It's in there. Degree, certificate, certification, all of those are in there. So again, I think we're, perfect. So I think the question, you know, we haven't had anyone request anything that we haven't been able to add unless it was like, you know, this college's boot camp program. And again, we're sharing specifically, we're looking at larger pathways. And then later is where you identify the credential or the program much more specifically, but colleges haven't gotten down to that point, or at least not all of them yet, to drill down to be able to say, oh yeah, that's where that credential goes. So again, the general pathways, software development, help desk, networking, cybersecurity, Google IT, we added that one. There's a few others there too, but again, there's those major categories. Now, if you need a major category added, we're happy to do that. It just needs to be, again, allowable per the grant, but then general enough that we're looking at these umbrella type programs.
Yeah, Whitney, let me just add one thing too. I think in terms of this kind of the program catalog, you know, so you know, a way of looking at that is that, you know, what is the primary reason that the individual is there? What is the primary area that they are studying? Now, credentialing, of course, is different, and, you know, there may be several different credentials listed and across different programs, but both for program and both for credential, we have the mechanism in place, which is just simply reaching out to us and saying, this isn't available, but we need it to be. And as long as, you know, it is something that we can allow, because, you know, to Whitney's point, you know, the ability to have a college-specific degree and that kind of thing is all an option within the system. But what we're trying to avoid is something where we just have a sort of a free text box where we can't make heads or tails of it. We have to have some way to aggregate that. But it's, and the turnaround on that's super quick. As long as it's something that's allowed, we can enter it in, and 10 seconds later, you see it. So it's not like it's a laborious process to get the information in, but there has to be safeguards on the front end.
And Rebecca, I know you've shared some of the challenges that colleges have had with this, but again, no one has really come to us except a couple, and we've worked that out. So if anyone on the call has anything like, oh, well, I don't see this and I would like to see this added, you know, please speak up. We'd love to hear what that is.
Anybody else have any questions? We are getting really close here and trying to be cognizant of everyone's time. Upcoming support. The coaching is going to continue. We think that is very beneficial. We're going to continue working on that mentoring resource, and thank you, Rebecca, for that suggestion. And we'll continue with project introductory, I can't even say the word, and how-to videos, and making sure those that are through Prime are reflected in it. We're doing the refresher training, and as Whitney indicated, also working one-on-one as needed with colleges. I think another area will be marketing materials that we'll work with you on over the next year or two. And we also are focused on this lunch and learn, which will not begin until later this summer. I think August, I think, is when those are projected to kick off. So those are some of the ways that we're going to provide support. We'll continue learning communities, of course, operational meetings. And if you can think of ways that we can provide you more support as you, or areas that you need assistance in, that we could provide some information, support, or contacts, etc., reach out, let us know, and we'll see what we can do. Whitney, anything on this one?
No, thanks, Levon. I think that's really good. I just want to, or maybe one thing, I guess, the marketing materials, some of you had, this came out of the strategic planning that, you know, you would like some sort of very basic marketing things that you could tailor and get out the door. And so we've put that as a part of one of our contractor scope to create just some very basic marketing materials that you can tailor to your specific programs in that way to help you build a little capacity, because we know you guys are all wearing multiple hats. The lunch and learn is just going to be an open forum, maybe like, I don't know, Fridays at noon or something like that, where you guys can jump on. ICCB staff are not on, and it's just time for colleges to jump in and ask questions of one another, or, you know, just a way for you all to connect. That you don't have to attend those, but if you want to attend those, they'll be open weekly or bi-weekly if you want to jump on. It's just a way for you guys to connect without us there. It's unstructured, but of course you can work together and collaborate to make it more structured, but they wanted us to provide an opportunity for you all to chat outside of a structured environment. So those will be available to you too in the near future. I think that's it. I think you covered everything else, Levon.
Okay. And then once again, we're back to important dates and reminders. So June 30th is your scope of work. You can see all of the elements that are being requested. July 14th is another learning community, and once again that says to be determined. 19th through the 22nd, as we indicated earlier, will be our monitoring. July 30th, your year 2, quarter 4 is due with the supplemental. And we're asking at the same time that you have all participants to date entered into AGS Prime. So there's a lot going on, along with all the other end-of-year activities that you have with other grants and other college activities, but this is what's going to be happening in Capit basically over the next month. So any questions on that? Busy. Okay. Now, we've discussed things all along, so, and we are almost at the end of our time, but is there anything that has jumped out at you, or a question or an issue that you do want to put on the table, even if we can't have a full-blown discussion? I had something really quick that's sort of on, it is on topic, but you know, I'm sure you're all aware of all the articles and all of the information out there about, I just read an article this morning on work about people are leaving their jobs for better paying jobs, forcing, you know, more of a worker focus, renewed focus on wages, etc., pushing wages. I'm just curious because I'm very interested in, you know, work issues and what makes people successful, etc., work-wise. And I am curious, just if you would think about, you don't have to answer this now, but I am curious, do you think that the environment we're in right now, with what appears to be a lot of job openings, but also people not applying, is that hurting you or helping you, do you think? Or over the next year, what do you think? Or have you, maybe you haven't even thought about it, but I do think it is something to be aware of, because I was talking to an employer. I always ask when I go places, you know, what kind of work do they look for and how are things going? And so I asked a local grocery store, it's a chain, and they said they can't get people to come in, and then I talked to one of the employees at the grocery store, and they said, well, they don't pay benefits. So you kind of have a double whammy there. And I'm wondering, is that that kind of environment, do you think it's going to hurt you in recruiting apprentices? I just thinking out loud, you don't have to answer. So.
I'll just quickly answer because we've been working with employers, and I think that one of the challenges we have is getting employers to understand the value of skilled workers and paying them a wage. And it's kind of going back to what you said about the grocery workers and not getting benefits. People that go to school and they achieve these degrees or certificates, and they are more qualified than somebody walking off the street, expect to be paid more than minimum wage. And that's one of the conversations that I don't like to have with employers, but when they're complaining that they don't have employees, maybe they need to look at their hiring practices a little bit. So
that's a very good point. Thank you. I was just thinking about that and wanted to just throw that out to everyone, so that was my sort of philosophical thought for the day.
Yeah, and I think you can always point to the research that's been done on apprenticeship programs about the reduction in cost of hiring and the retention of these employees versus other employees, and I think that could be a really good selling point for the investment for employers. So, all right. So thank you all. I appreciate the comments in the chat. I appreciate you all jumping on today. I hope that we've provided some helpful information. We are very proud of the progress that you guys are making. We are very appreciative of sticking with this grant. We know it's been a challenging one, but we hope that it pays off and that we can find some sustainable ways outside of the grant to really continue these efforts with some of the less stringent requirements. So we're very happy with all the work that you guys are putting in. So kudos to you all. All right. Thank you all so much. We will share out this recording with some redacted information sometime today, maybe a little bit later this week. We got to do some work on the recording. Otherwise, we hope to hear from you in terms of the Department of Labor materials, if you have any specific things you want to share with us, and of course your scopes of work on the 30th. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Bernie. Good luck.